and welcome to week 4 of our online course on Competences for Global Collaboration. My name is Denny Seiger and I'm the facilitator of this week and will lead you through this week's topic, which is relationships and networks in business marketing. Cooperation and competition among creatures has been or have existed since a long time. Since Charles Darwin, we know how important competition is for the survival and the prospering of species. There are various ways of competition, like competing about food or competing about reproductive success. Some researchers view cooperation as being even more important for the evolutionary success of a species than competition. And in a recent massive open online course by the University of Melbourne, researchers showed that, especially among birds, for example, there is a lot of cooperation going on among birds, where there are helpers, subordinate helpers, that help parents to raise children. Other examples of cooperative behavior can be found among bacteria, for example, or everyone is familiar with the example of the cleaner fish. Researchers have raised the question whether the concepts and strategies of competition and cooperation can be applied to the world of business. So instead of looking at the individual and the relationships of individuals or groups, researchers focus on intra-organizational relationships and how different forms of cooperation and competition, the marketing functions or the marketing can support the marketing efforts. Initially, researchers looked at the business-to-business or industrial markets for the analysis of relationships, but later on the concept of relationship marketing was successfully applied to consumer marketing as well. The relationship was still perceived as very dyadic, so between two players, the focal firm and the customer. And it was seen downstream from the focal firm, the seller. This changed with the supply chain view. The relationship with suppliers and suppliers was taken into consideration and was seen as increasingly important for the success of a business. So not only the upstream but also the downstream channel was taken into consideration, and we call this the extended value chain. Marketing actually spoke about a new form of competition where not companies were competing with each other for customers, but the better value chain would lead to success. So the better value chain would win the fight about the market. In 1990, Nokia was famous for its supply chain, and the company was very effective in producing a wide variety of telephones at low cost. Another example would be the automotive industry, where with the introduction of just-in-time delivery, every player in the supply chain had to adapt to this new form of delivery and therefore had to invest, even the buying company, the so-called OEM. Then the perspective widened from the extended value chain to take into account also the network partners, the whole network of companies that are active and make the focal firm succeed. What can these be, these network partners? Universities, for example, or research institutions, other research institutions. It can be government agencies. It can be even competitors with whom the company for certain purposes collaborates. We have examples in the automotive industry where a car engine is built jointly by two competing OEMs, but there are also examples in other industries. And it becomes more and more important how the company positions itself in the network. The term ecosystem is also a term that is more and more used and describes such a network of collaborators. These don't have to be located in the upstream or downstream business. They can be outside of the direct business area of the focal firm. They are complementers to the business of the focal firm. In today's globally interconnected world of business, we have to ask ourselves whether this concept or these concepts of networks and business relationships are equally important all over the world. To answer this question, I invited my colleague Dr. Rahul Singh from the Birla Institute of Management Technology in India to join us on a discussion via Skype. Thanks very much for being with us and for collaborating on this online course and sharing your view about the situation in the emerging economies, especially in India, and explaining a little bit how networking and relationship marketing is what the practices are in India. Is there evidence that these concepts are being used in India as well?
Thank you, Denny, for inviting me for my views on this excellent course. I'm happy to contribute about emerging market experiences, especially India. So India is not growing the way China is and probably any other emerging market, but it has self-developed mechanism of business practices. Unlike developed markets where business evolution is based on process and globalization due to lesser consumption probably, emerging markets have growing consumption and less attention on developed practices because they have enough to sell and there is enough market. The evolution of network theory to 3C model, which is co-creation, collaboration and cooperation, is probably happening in only developed markets because there is a scope of the next evolution and next practices. So here is my argument. Probably this concept will not be in so developed a state as it is in the developed markets, and I'm talking about the emerging market here. But it is present very much in the emerging markets and it varies in its degree and structure in different markets. It has moved from being aggregator to networks. That also depends on how globally linked the economy or company is. So I would like to support this with an example. I'm taking an example from India, which is Maruti Suzuki. It's an extension of Suzuki in India, the largest Indian car manufacturer. Maruti produces cars with few hundred partners who are specialized terminals in their domain and just not the suppliers. It also builds network with banks and financiers and insurance companies on financial security needs, and with government system facilitators for compliance requirements. So the network-based model is not only about a product or service, but it is also about offering a complete comprehensive solution. So it is existing in emerging markets, especially in India.
And historically, have Indian businesses dealt with each other rather at arm's length, and was the relationship dyadic? And also, has this changed over the last few decades?
So as I was saying, there are few traces of this concept in Indian market. Now I'm going to focus on Indian market. So the concept of relationship and network is not new here, at least in India, but it was never so significant till 1990s when India started actually the globalization. Let me give you a broad business concept of India very quickly. India was a controlled market till 1991, and it was probably a seller's market where companies used to go with the products and services and the sale was happening without any effort. So it was just distribution and sales. More than 80% of the business here was in family business model, which practiced the relationship concepts informally. And so historically it was present. And of course, network model is being used by Tatas and Birlas for more than a century, and these companies are globally known companies from India. But the model was dominating the relationship than the partnership. So these companies were the kings actually. But with the liberalization of Indian market in 1991, the business environment moved from seller's market to competition, and that's actually the gift of West to India, that it changed its business environment. So since 2000, there are different developed processes in the Indian companies, and actually the global best practices have entered in Indian market, which actually have helped the Indian companies to go global in an organic and also inorganic format. So I would argue that yes, it has been historically present, and probably it has evolved in its own manner than what has been the life cycle in developed markets.
Okay, thank you, Rahul. So we can conclude that relationships are not something new. It's something that has been here and not only for humans but for all kinds of species. We see it among the animals, as I already told the audience in the introductions. But the formal research on the impact of relationships and networks on the business practices has only started not so long ago, and is a very interesting subject which will be introduced in this week, and we hope for participation of many students or interested parties. Thank you, Rahul, again. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
And thanks everyone, and I look forward to the participation in the course.